It is about the editorials on the Monday on 29th of May. So just I'm going to give the headings of the editorial with the subheading, and then I will go into the details. First, regarding okay, it's not about okay. You can see here a belligerence towards Beijing that is unsettling. Next is at Hiroshima, Japan's movement to reinforce partnership. At Hiroshima, Japan's movement to reinforce partnerships. Menstrual health is public health issue. Most soldiers killed in action during UN missions were Indian. Kadumbasri is at a crossroads. From the margins, alarming turn. Okay. I'm going to talk about the first thing is the most soldiers killed in action during United Nations mission were Indian. The UN operation in the Congo between 1960 and 1964 was the deadliest for Indian troops. The United Nations observed the 75th anniversary of its peacekeeping missions last Thursday. During a ceremony to pay tribute to the more than 4,000 peacekeepers who have died on duty, Secretary General of the UN Antonio Guterres requested hundreds of military officers and diplomats in uniform to observe a moment of silence in their honor. He then awarded medals to ambassadors from the 39 home countries of the 103rd peacekeepers who lost their lives in 2022. The first military observation was sent by the UN Security Council to oversee the Israel-Arab armistice agreement in May 1948. Indian troops and experts have played a significant role in the UN's peacekeeping missions. Data show that since the inception of UN's peacekeeping mission, most of the lives were lost during peacekeeping missions due to malicious acts of Indian troops. Chart 1 shows the number of peacekeepers country-wise who died due to malicious acts during peacekeeping missions. In total, 1,115 peacekeepers have died on the field due to malicious acts, of which 69 were from India, followed by Chad 64, Ghana 53, Nigeria 44, and Pakistan 44. In total, 4,298 peacekeepers have died, 1,481 due to illness, 1,386 due to accidents, 316 due to other causes, and the rest due to malicious acts. The United Nations operation in the Congo between July 1960 and June 1964 proved to be the deadliest for Indian troops and experts, with 15 dying due to malicious acts. A front page article published on November 24, 1960 in the Hindu described the attack of the Congolese soldiers on Indian officers in detail. It spoke of how Indian army majors were taken out of their residences by bayonet point and severely injured with rifle butts. A colonel who was in charge of the Indian contingent was stopped by Congolese soldiers who had some submachine guns, and his car was taken away. By the end of March 1963, most Indian troops returned. The then Deputy Defense Minister D.R. Chavan said in the Lok Sabha that 136 Indian Armed Force personnel were killed during the mission. Chart 2 shows that the Indian fatalities due to malicious acts across various peacekeeping campaigns following the ONUC, the United Nations operation in Somalia, between March 1993 and 1995 resulted in the loss of 12 Indian troops and experts due to malicious acts. Among ongoing missions, the United Nations mission in South Sudan recorded the deaths of 7 Indian troops. Chart 3 shows the country-wise number of military, police personnel, mission experts, and staff officers currently serving in UN peacekeeping missions. With 6,097 such personnel, India stands third after Bangladesh, 7,237, and Nepal, 6,264. It is followed by Rwanda and Pakistan, 4 of the Four of the top five contributions come from the Indian subcontinent. Notably, most of the troop and expert contributions have come from poor or middle income countries. The 71 operations conducted till date have seen participation from 2 million peacekeepers from 125 nations. Chart 4 shows the number of troops, experts, formed police units, and staff officers from India who are part of ongoing peacekeeping missions. Most Indians, 2,426, are part of the UNMISS, followed by the UN Stabilization Mission in Congo and United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon. Mr. Gores lamented that those striving to guide countries out of conflict are now situated on the front lines in some of the world's most dangerous places. Now, menstrual health is a public health issue. Despite many initiatives by governments and NGOs, prominent gaps may remain unaddressed in urban spaces. In a recent incident, a man from a city in Maharashtra allegedly killed his 12-year-old sister because he mistook period stains on her clothes as a sign of a sexual relationship. The incident is indicative of the extent of misinformation about the periods in India's urban locals. In urban India, girls and women navigate a good part of their life in the public domain. A young working woman travels for hours by public transport. A teenager living in slums makes her way to school through narrow lanes. A sanitation worker begins her day before dawn cleaning the city. A vegetable vendor spends hours by her stall, and a nurse works busy 12 hour shifts. Their lives are very different, but they all navigate public spaces on a daily basis while dealing with the private sector of their lives, their periods for are normal but continue to be shrouded by shame, stigma, and discrimination. Consequently, people face barriers in getting accurate information about periods and related products, using toilets and seeking help when needed. The popular belief is that rural areas are hubs for period poverty, backward, steeped in superstitions and safe practices, while urban areas are progressive with access to modern period products and related necessities. However, the lived experience of many urban dwellers show otherwise. The sanitation worker may not know much about her body or periods. He uses waste clothes during her periods and often throws away the cloth after one use, as she cannot wash, dry, and reuse the cloth hygienically. The teenager wears sanitary pads for 10 to 12 hours at a stretch. Both may not have a toilet in their homes and use a community toilet or go to secluded spot early in the morning or late at night. The community toilets close by 11 p.m. and are more often unclear. During summer, the water supply is limited and bathing daily may not be possible. The working woman wears extra pads as she may not have the time or clean or separate toilet at work to change. Barriers to menstrual hygiene. India has been front runner for action on menstrual hygiene. Governments, NGOs, and the private sector have all played an important role in spreading awareness and providing menstrual products. But the focus has often been on India's rural population, and for good reasons. However, India's large, rapidly growing urban population also calls out for attention. Field insights and research show that certain groups of urban dwellers face a whole range of limitations that affects their menstrual health. The understanding of periods is still limited, especially among low-income groups. Period products may be more easily available in local kirana shops, chemists, and online channels, but continue to be wrapped in paper or black plastic bags due to the associated same. While many urban homes have toilets, residents of low-income slums, payment dwellers, and some education institutions and workplaces still do not have toilets or have toilets that are not easily accessible, safe, or clean and convenient. Poor awareness, stigma, and same limited access to products, lack of personal hygiene, poor toilet and poor water facilities, and difficulties in disposing pads can cause anxiety, discomfort, and infections and long-term health problems. Menstrual waste management is a looming concern given the growing use of disposable sanitary pads. Routine garbage collection exists in many urban residential areas but not in low income areas. Where waste collection mechanisms exist, users don't always aggregate pads. Sanitation workers are then forced to sort through waste with their bare hands, the task undermines their health and dignity. Doable actions can help improve menstrual health in urban India, especially for low income groups and in public spaces. Awareness about periods is key pillar of action and must be continued, along with efforts to address harmful social and gender norms. Menstrual products, both reusable and disposable, must be more available through various access channels, retail outlets, social enterprises, government schemes, and NGOs. People should have the information and right to choose the products that they want to use. Citizen movements such as Green and Red support urban population to use menstrual cups and cloth pads, providing that much needed exposure to reusable products. Female friendly community and public toilets are gaining popularity. See toilets in Telangana and Tamil Nadu, and pink toilets in Delhi provide safe, private, and clean facilities with essential amenities needed to manage periods. Disposal and management remain a challenge. Yet, some promising practices include the provision of dustbins and incinerations in female toilets, which promote waste segregation at source through initiatives like the Red Dot campaign and innovations like pad care labs. Closing gaps. Some prominent gaps remain unaddressed in urban spaces, reaching people living in unregistered slums, payments, refugee camps, and other vulnerable conditions in urban areas. Work sites, both formal and informal, need to cater to the menstrual needs of women and who work. Support should continue for innovations in menstrual waste management that are safe, effective, and scalable. As we mark May 28 as Menstrual Hygiene Day, let us come together to share the narrative on menstrual health as vital to personal health, public health, and human rights for all. Now, National Institute to Help Handicapped, Guwahati, May 28, the Union government to establish a comprehensive national institute for each major category of handicapped persons. The Vice President, Mrs. G.S. Patak, said here today the institute will undertake research, train key personnel, and process import education and training to a limited number of persons. Mr. Patak said the first school for partially deaf children had been set up in Hyderabad as part of the National Institute. He regretted that responses to the incentives offered by the union government to physically handicapped students had not been very encouraging. Mr. Patik was inaugurating the fourth Congress of the All India Federation of the Deaf here today. Mr. Patik called for an all-out effort for the total removal of deafness to enable the disabled enjoy life as normal persons. With a high degree of sophistication attained in surgical treatment coupled with rapid advance in science and technology, this could be achieved in the near future. He said Mr. Patek said while the more robust among the deaf might survive the abysmal silence of their lives without damage, it might well lead to mental depression and development of certain antisocial complex in sensitive cases. It is only natural, therefore, that the plight of the deaf should engage the attention not only of medical specialists and scientists but also social workers, educationists, and psychologists all over the world, he said. At Hiroshima, Japan's movement to reinforce partnership. The G7 For Tokyo, the G7 summit was driven by the need to define and devise the means of navigating the complex geopolitical landscape of the Indo-Pacific. The G7 Hiroshima summit is the first hosted by Tokyo since the 2008 summit and comes at a time when the world is faced with enervating challenges such as the war in Ukraine, the threat of nuclear proliferation, rapidly transpiring impacts of climate change, economic security, unstable supply chains, and the impact and regulations of sensitive technologies. While the agenda for the summit was expensive and ambitious, the imperative for the G7 countries led by Japan appeared to be centered around the means to consolidate approaches toward the most pressing global issues while working respective geopolitical tightropes. For Tokyo, the summit was driven in large part by the need to define and devise the means of navigating the complex geopolitical landscape of the Indo Pacific in order to enable collaboration that would be functional as well as act as bulwarks. It was a movement to reinforce partnership in a region that has become laden with security risks and is a key theater for great power competition while simultaneously being the principal geography on which the trajectory of the rest of the world's fortune depends. Why the agenda is vital for Japan. Issues that weighed heavily on the agenda of the Hiroshima summit included Russia's aggression in Ukraine, which is now more than a year old and shows little signs of abating. A China that is increasingly on the offensive with an ever active military and nuclear moderation plan, China's growing military pressures on Taiwan, and dangers posed by North Korea's increasingly volatile nuclear posturing and nuclear weapons program. While all of these issues are of great significance globally for the Indo Pacific and Japan in particular, these are vital given the country's geographical location in close proximity to China, Russia, and North Korea. Concurrently, both in the weeks leading up to the summit and during it, Tokyo sought to set up collaboration in science and technology and progress data. Its objective of reinvigorating the country's chip industry. Security, nevertheless, informed much of the agenda at the summit. The war in Ukraine has had significant impact on Japan's national security strategy. In the wake of the invasion, Japan has announced a number of changes to its defense policy, including plans to increase its defense spending and acquire new weapon systems. Similarly, China has been rapidly expanding its military power in recent years and has been increasingly assertive in its territorial claims in the East China Sea and South China Sea. Tokyo is no stranger to the debilitating consequences of a nuclear attack and is quite naturally concerned about the frequent nuclear posturing by Pyongyang, with the latter not only conducting a number of missile tests in recent years but also threatening to attack Japan with nuclear weapons. These concerns are also shared by Seoul and Washington and are a key driving force behind US efforts to strengthening the security architecture of Northeast Asia. New Delhi Tokyo partnership is important. Recent years have witnessed steady collaboration between New Delhi and Tokyo with regular joint military exercises and progress of agreements on economic cooperation. While Japan has been involved in the South Asian region through its involvement in several infrastructure initiatives, recent years have witnessed India partnering with Japan for advancing the same objective through the development of infrastructure projects in third countries in the Indo-Pacific region. As two of the world's largest democracies, the continued cooperation between India and Japan is an important indicator of what sustained partnerships can achieve in addressing the changes of the 21st century. The G7 2023 summit was another opportunity for Japan and India to further strengthen their partnership and expand the scope of their shared interests. Two key principles from the central basis for both Japan and India's role in the Indo-Pacific. First, the preservation of rules-based order, and second, position to any unilateral attempt to alter regional order. Both countries reiterated these principles at the Hiroshima summit, particularly with reference to Russia and China. Closer and stronger ties between India and Japan are significant for boosting middle power diplomacy in the region. Advancing Shinzo Abe's legacy. Fumio Kishida, as the current Japanese Prime Minister, enthusiastically carrying forward the legacy of his predecessor, Shinzo Abe, who was a strong advocate for Japan's active role in the world and worked determinedly to strengthen the country's ties with its allies. Mr. Kishida's efforts are evident in the strong network building that he has undertaken and Hiroshima summit, which saw the participation of India, South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, Australia, and Japan and Brazil. And Brazil, among others, is the furthest instance of Japan looking to build upon its relationships and transform them into partnership that would bolster the region. His efforts saw agreements with the